The Negro American Family. At the heart of the deterioration of the fabric of Negro society is the deterioration of the Negro family. It is the fundamental source of the weakness of the Negro community at the present time. There is probably no single fact of Negro American life so little understood by whites. The Negro situation is commonly perceived by whites in terms of the visible manifestation of discrimination and poverty, in part because Negro protest is directed against such obstacles, and in part, no doubt, because these are facts which involve the actions and attitudes of the white community as well. It is more difficult, however, for whites to perceive the effect that 3 centuries of exploitation have had on the fabric of Negro society itself. Here, the consequences of the historic injustices done to Negro Americans are silent and hidden from view. But here is where the true injury has occurred. Unless this damage is repaired, all the effort to end discrimination and poverty and injustice will come to little. The role of the family in shaping character and ability is so pervasive as to be easily overlooked. The family is the basic social unit of American life. It is the basic socializing unit. By and large, adult conduct in society is learned as a child. A fundamental insight of psychoanalytic theory, for example, is that the child learns a way of looking at life in his early years through which all later experience is viewed and which profoundly shapes his adult conduct. It may be hazarded that the reason family structure does not loom larger in public discussion of social issues is that people tend to assume that the nature of family life is about the same throughout American society. The mass media and the development of suburbia have created an image of the American family as a highly standardized phenomenon. It is therefore easy to assume that whatever it is that makes for differences among individuals or group of individuals, it is not a different family structure. There is much more truth to this, as with any other nation. Americans are producing a recognizable family system, but that process is not completed by any means. There are still, for example, important differences in family patterns surviving from the age of the Great European Migration to the United States, and these variations account for notable differences in the progress and assimilation of various ethnic and religious groups. A number of immigrant groups were characterized by unusually strong family bonds. These groups have characteristically progressed more rapidly than others. But there is one truly great discontinuity in family structure in the United States at the present time, that between the white world in general and that of the Negro American. The white family has achieved a high degree of stability and is maintaining that stability. By contrast, the family structure of lower-class Negroes is highly unstable, and in many urban centers is approaching complete breakdown. NB, there is considerable evidence that the Negro community is in fact dividing between a stable middle-class group that is steadily growing stronger and more successful, and an increasingly disorganized and disadvantaged lower-class group. There are indications, for example, that the middle-class Negro family puts a higher premium on family stability and the conserving of family resources than does the white middle-class family. The discussion of this paper is not obviously directed to the first group, excepting as it is affected by the experiences of the second, an important exception. There are 2 points to be noted in this context. First, the emergence and increasing visibility of a Negro middle class may beguile the nation into supposing that the circumstances of the remainder of the Negro community are equally preposterous, whereas just the opposite is true at present and is likely to continue so. Second, the lumping of all Negroes together in one statistical measurement very probably conceals the extent of the disorganization among the lower class group. If conditions are improving for one and deteriorating for the other, the resultant statistical averages might show no change. Further, the statistics on the Negro family and most other subjects treated in this paper refer only to a specific point in time. They are a vertical measure of the situation at a given moment. They do not measure the experience of individuals over time. Thus, the average monthly unemployment rate for Negro males for 1964 is recorded as 9%. But during 1964, some 29% of Negro males were unemployed at one time or another. Similarly, for example, if 36% of Negro children are living in broken homes at any specific moment, it is likely that a far higher proportion of Negro children find themselves in that situation at one time or another in their lives. Nearly a quarter of urban Negro marriages are dissolved. Nearly a quarter of Negro women living in cities who have ever married are divorced, separated, or are living apart from their husbands. The rates are highest in the urban Northeast, where 26% of Negro women ever married are either divorced, separated, or have their husbands absent. On the urban frontier, the proportion of husbands absent is even higher. In New York City in 1960, it was 30.2%, not including divorces. Among every married non-white woman in the nation, the proportion with husbands present declined in every age group over the decade 1950 to 60. Although similar declines occurred among white females, the proportion of white husbands present never dropped below 90%, except for the first and last age group, 9. Nearly 1/4 of Negro births are now illegitimate. Both white and Negro illegitimacy rates have been increasing, although from dramatically different bases. The white rate was 2% in 1940. It was a 3.0% in 1963. In that period, the Negro rate went from 16.8% to 23.6%. The number of illegitimate children per 1,000 live births increased by 11 among whites in the period 1940 to 63, but by 68 among non-whites. There are, of course, limits to the dependability of these statistics. There are almost certainly a considerable number of Negro children who, although technically illegitimate, are in fact the offspring of stable unions. On the other hand, it may be assumed that many births that are in fact illegitimate are recorded otherwise. Probably the two opposite effects cancel each other out. On the urban frontier, the non-white illegitimacy rates are usually higher than the national average, and the increase of late has been drastic. In the District of Columbia, the illegitimacy rate for non-whites grew from 21.8% in 1950 to 29.5% in 1964. A similar picture of disintegrated Negro marriages emerges from the divorce statistics. Divorces have increased of late for both whites and non-whites, but at a much greater rate for the latter. In 1940, both groups had a divorce rate of 2.2%. By 1964, the white rate had risen to 3.6%, but the non-white rate had reached 5.1%, 40% greater than the formerly equal white rate. Almost 1/4 of Negro families are headed by females. As a result of this high rate of divorce, separation, and desertion, a very large percent of Negro families are headed by females, while the percentage of such families among whites has been dropping since 1940. It has been rising among Negroes. The percent of non-white families headed by a female is more than double the percent for whites. Farther, non-white families increased by a sixth between 1950 and 1960, but held constant for white families. It has been estimated that only a minority of Negro children reach the age of 18 having lived all their lives with both of their parents. Once again, this measure of family disorganization is found to be diminishing among white families and increasing among Negro families. The breakdown of the Negro family has led to a startling increase in welfare dependency. The majority of Negro children receive public assistance under the AFDC program at one point or another in their childhood. At present, 14% of Negro children are receiving AFDC assistance, as against 2% of white children. 8% of white children receive such assistance at some time, as against 56% of non-whites, according to an extrapolation based on Hugh data. Let it be noted, however, that out of a total of 1.8 million non-white illegitimate children in the nation in 1961, 1.3 million were not receiving aid under the AFDC program, although a substantial number have or will receive aid at some time in their lives. Again, the situation may be said to be worsening. The AFDC program, deriving from the long-established Mother's Aid programs, was established in 1935 principally to care for widows and orphans, although the legislation covered all children in homes deprived of parental support because one or both of their parents are absent or incapacitated. In the beginning, the number of AFDC families in which the father was absent because of desertion was less than a third of the total. Today, it is 2/3. HEW estimates that between 2/3 and 3/4 of the 50% increase from 1948 to 1955 in the number of absent father families receiving ADC may be explained by an increase in broken homes in the population. 10. A 1960 study of aid to dependent children in Cook County, Illinois, stated the typical ADC mother in Cook County was married and had children by her husband, who deserted. His whereabouts are unknown, and he does not contribute to the support of his children. She is not free to remarry and has had an illegitimate child since her husband left. Almost 90% of the ADC families are Negro. 11. The steady expansion of this welfare program, as of public assistance programs in general, can be taken as a measure of the steady disintegration of the Negro family structure over the past generation in the United States. The Negro American family. At the heart of the deterioration of the fabric of Negro society is the deterioration of the Negro family. It is the fundamental source of the weakness of the Negro community at the present time. There is probably no single fact of Negro American life so little understood by whites.